Hey developers, today we're going to look at Ember.js, computed properties, filter, and filter by. We're going to go through a quick example on how that works. So let's begin. All right, so the other day someone had a question about how filter and filter by work in Ember.js. So if you don't know, there's a website called Ember.twiddle, which if you're learning Ember.js, which is a great website, you can create your own like mini applications. You can kind of play around with it. You can do a lot of cool stuff. So I thought today I would go ahead and just show you a quick version of this program that this person was having a problem with. Basically, they were wanting to use a filter by in their program with a component, and they wanted to use something passed into the component in the filter by, and it wasn't working correctly. So if you don't want to know what I'm talking about, let me take one step back. If you look at the API documents for Ember.js.com, you can see there is these computed properties, and under Ember.computed there's these kind of helper functions that helper methods that help us do things. One thing you should know, filter is a way you can filters the array by the callback. And so you can, if you have like an array and you wanted to only show certain things in it, you can kind of create your own function here and return certain things. There is something called FilterBy, which makes that a little bit easier because it has three values you pass in. One's the dependent key, one's the property key, and one's the value. So in this case, the dependent key, you can see here in the example, I'll move my head a little bit so you can see a little bit easier. It says Ember computed, filter by chores done, and false here. So what this is saying is that we have this chores array. It says that's the dependent key. The property key is done, and it says return false. So it's only going to return the ones in this chores array for the done key that's false. So that's what it returns. So this is actually pretty handy, so you don't have to write all these things. So let's just take an example. Let's go into Ember.twiddle and create an example of using filter and filter by to see how it works. So once again, like I said, I'm using Ember.twiddle here. Go to ember-twiddle.com to use it. So I'm going to start with just creating a route. So I'm going to go route, and I'm going to create an application route. There we go. And then inside Ember route this is where normally the model is, and the model would return data. It also would happen to, a lot of times it works with Ember data, and you would go out to a server and get information. But in this instance, I'm going to just return an array of data so that we can use the filter and filter by and see how that works. So I have my array here, and that bothers me that it's out there, but that's okay. And then in my array, I'm going to create an object, and let's do an array of bands. So that might be easy. So we'll call it band, and we'll call it Metallica, and we'll call status. So we're seeing like these bands, are they active, are they retired? I'm just gonna make this up. So I'm gonna call this guy's active. Let's do 4 just for the heck of it. And we'll call AC/DC, and then we'll call Beatles, and Blink 182. And so we'll say these first 2 are active, and we'll call the last 2 retired, because maybe they're not performing anymore. I don't think Blink 182 is performing anymore. If you know, leave a comment below. All right, so we have this model, and if we know the basics from Ember.js, that we have the access to this model in our application now, since it's on the application route. So we can use this model and we can pass it around to different places in our app. So let's create a component. We're going to call it my list. What should I call it? My list. Doesn't really matter as long as it has a hyphen in it. I'm trying to look at Yeah, we'll just call it my list. Now we'll call it my list component. It doesn't really matter. All right, so now we have the my list component, and we just want to make sure this works. So we're not gonna worry about the yield right now. I'm gonna call it h2 my list component, and then in our application, we're gonna get rid of the outlet. We're going to just list the my list component. And you can see it's right over here, my list component. So we know it's talking, it's working. But what we want to do is we want to pass in the route, or the model that we created inside the route. So let's call it list, and we're going to pass in the model. So what this means is we're going to take the model in this application, and then we're going in the application route, and we're going to pass it into the component, and it's going to be called list. So let's demonstrate that it works. So let's go back to the component here, and we'll totally messed up. Okay, so there's something called an each helper. We'll call each list as, and then we put in, we'll call it item. And we'll end the each. And then we can do, let's do this. Okay, we'll make it a list, unordered list. And we'll li, and then we'll do item.band. So there it is. So we can see right here we have our 4 bands that we created earlier were passed into this component, and we named it list. So we see Metallica, AC/DC, Beatles, and Blink-182. So that's good so far. So now we're going to, the crux of the issue is that we want to filter this somehow, this list. And we have some built-in stuff into Ember to do that. So we can go back to our Ember default component, extend, and we're going to create Ember.computed.FilterBy. So this is kind of the first thing you might think of to do this. So we can go filter by, and we're going to filter by the key, the dependent key list. Remember from the API, dependent key, property key, and value. So dependent keys list. And let's say we wanted to look at the status. So status. And we want only active ones. So we'll go active here. So great. So we created this. Didn't quite create it right. We've got to give it a name. So we'll call this active list. Okay. So we got an active list here. And then we can, this now is available in our component, the active list. So we can do another one. We can do h2 active list. And then we can do the same thing. So each, we can go active list as item. We'll close off the each. And then we'll do the same thing here. I guess I should have just copied and pasted it, but whatever. And we'll do an li here. And then we can do something like this. Item.band. And then we'll close off the li. And we have one problem because I have a T here. Okay, there it is. So you can see here's the list of everything, but the active list only has Metallica and AC/DC. So we can then go in here and change it. If we go back to our component, let's say we want retired. So now we see Beatles and Blink-182, which is perfect. However, we would run into one problem, and I want to show you this. So this is a question I saw on Reddit that, okay, so you have this application, but what happens if you wanted to pass in the status in here? So I'm going to pass in the status here as, I don't know, active. So how do you get this status into the filter by without having to do a whole lot of work? So if you go into to the back to the component, now we do have the status that's active. So you would think that maybe in the FilterBy, this retired right here, you can do something like this .get.status. But you would notice there's a build error because it doesn't work. So if you go back into the console, you could see here it says unexpected token, this .get.status doesn't understand it. Let me make sure I get the extra one there. But even though it says it's okay, it still says cannot get read property get of undefined. So definitely not working there. So it doesn't understand how to get it for your active list here. But there's a way to fix this, of course. And there probably is a couple ways. If you know another way, let me know in the comments below. But we can take this active list, which I could see here, and we'll delete out this .get. Instead of making it a filter by, we can just make it a filter. And if we go back to our API, we could see filter right here. We just have a dependent key and a callback. So in that case, we know the dependent key is the list that was passed in. So then we would have something like this. We had a function, we have an item, we have a closing bracket, and now we can return something that would filter this list, kind of like just a normal filter you would probably see in any other JavaScript with your ES6. So we can do something like this. We can do return this. Well, we return item.status if it equals this.get.status. And that's essentially it. Make sure we don't put semicolons at the end of our Ember computed filter. Still one problem because I think I may have accidentally deleted something here. Let's do this. There we go. So now you can see here we have Metallica and AC/DC, and now this is coming from the actual, when we declare the component in here. So if I go and put this to retired, you can see here at the bottom it automatically changes to Beatles and Blink-182. So now it's reading it from basically this top application instead of inside the component itself. It's being read from here instead. So that's just a quick thing. I mean, we could even get a little more fancier. We could create a button that toggles some sort of toggles between retired and active, and we can have that button inside the application HBS file, and then that would toggle the active list, which would be fine. We could do that too. So that's it, just a quick introduction on Filter and FilterBy. Hope you found that interesting. Thank you for watching. If you like these type of videos, click that subscribe button. That really helps me. And also click that little bell button. You get notified the next time I create a video. Thanks. Take care.